We're going to go ahead and get started with today's webinar. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. My name is Marley Long, and I'll go ahead and get things kicked off. I am the marketing manager here at Cardiolog Analytics, and today's webinar will focus on how to drive productivity in SharePoint and in Office 365. A bit of housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded. If you want to share this with a colleague in the next few days, we'll go ahead and send an email to everyone who's signed up with the recording as well. You can connect with us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @Cardiolog. And of course, if you have any questions, we'll leave some time towards the end of the webinar for Q&A. So you can send any of the questions that you may have at any point during the webinar into the chat box in the GoToWebinar panel. In regards to the agenda for today's webinar, we'll start out with a very short introduction. We'll talk a bit about Interlock and who we are. I'll then jump into a presentation with some tips and the best metrics you can use to drive productivity and adoption in SharePoint and in Office 365. And as I mentioned before, we will have a quick Q&A session. So if you have any questions, again, we'll be happy to take them at any point during the webinar. Brief introduction. Interlock has been around for about 11 years now, since 2005. We're based out of Boston. So for the past 11 years, we've been focused on web analytics design for SharePoint. Our flagship solution is Cardiolog Analytics, which is built specifically for internal platforms, including all versions of SharePoint from 2007 to 2016, as well as SharePoint Online and Office 365. We can also track third-party tools like Yammer, Citrion, CRM tools, and the like. Our goal is to help our customers constantly improve SharePoint based on how it's being used. So there are three main pillars that we talk to our customers about. The first is monitor, which is tracking the usage within SharePoint. The second is engaging users, asking them what their needs are, what their pain points are, and what's not working for them. And then finally, the most important pillar is enhance. So we want to make sure that we're constantly improving SharePoint based on these three pillars. And the idea is to have actionable metrics, which will allow us to constantly make SharePoint better for the users. So we'll go ahead and jump right into the topic for today. So I'd like to start just a basic question. First of all, why do we even need analytics when talking about SharePoint? So the key is that you can really only manage what you can measure, or if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So we can only know what's going on in SharePoint and define if SharePoint launch was successful. Measure if people are using it, and if their adoption is increasing is by being able to measure what's going on. And that's really the end goal that we help our customers with. Things like, how can we measure the deployment, analyze it, and then help customers improve their environments based on what's going on with this real data. And again, making an investment in an intranet includes a large amount of resources, in the forms of budgets for licenses and consultants, as well as human resources that can involve multiple teams, administrators, developers, stakeholders, as well as the migration of these key business assets. So by leveraging analytics, you can find out whether your portal is performing as expected and whether it's truly providing value to your organization. And I think another common theme that many people see in the SharePoint community is that business users see SharePoint as this kind of magic bullet that will solve a broad range of these internal communication and management issues, but really don't have a real understanding about just how or to what degree and at what cost. So too many people just kind of cross their fingers and jump into SharePoint without actually having these real ways of managing data and analyzing the portal in order to properly manage it. So a few common questions that may resonate with you as well, that we hear a lot of people approach us with, and they want to know very specific facts about the portal. So for instance, how many people are using the portal? What are most users doing in the portal? How should I plan for the growth of my portal? What is the most popular search? Where are my users coming from? And what are my customers downloading? And then, we can recommend very tailored metrics and analytics reports to answer these important business questions. Because at the end of the day, without having these vital pieces of information, organizations are just kind of flailing in the wind. So with these large investments and deployments, it's not just talk or, these kind of common corporate phrases to say we need to constantly measure. It's actually essential. And I think as the amount of data that really starts to accumulate more and more in the organization over time, this is really going to become a more accepted and standard practice. So just to give you an idea of what some of our customers have been able to do with analytics, here's just a few examples. So in terms of improving portal ROI, they were able to engage with enterprise users, so increasing portal productivity. By collecting insights from portal users, they were really able to drive collaboration forward because they were kind of armed with this useful data that they wouldn't have had before. Analytics can also be used to identify user challenges. So our customers facilitated innovative survey discussions, and based on the insights that they collected from the survey discussions, they were able to empower and improve user innovation. Enhancing portal usability, so this is a big one. So they could identify certain videos that were viewed for 20 seconds or less with a video tracking, and then they identified or replaced ineffective video content in the portal. Similarly, they identified unviewed announcements or updates, and then they were able to inform site owners how to most effectively position content for increasing viewing. And lastly, the final thing I'll mention is increasing corporate productivity. So they were able to identify failed search queries, thus saving employee time by refining these failed searches. They also identified how many users were accessing the portal less than 5 times per week. So they could easily see which employees were in need of additional training. So this is just an example of what a typical analytics dashboard looks like in Cardiolog Analytics. And this is actually our new interface that we released last week. So you can see here you can easily drag and drop all different kinds of widgets and graphs to fit all into one dashboard. And towards the end of my presentation, I'll jump into a very short demo to kind of show you what it looks like. So I'm going to break down tracking adoption a little bit more into some subcategories because it can sound a bit daunting at first. Tracking adoption, what does that really mean? So I'm going to focus on 4 key ways to track adoption and improve the portal. So the first category that I'll focus on is tracking basic usage activity and the users themselves. So over the course of different weeks and months, if people are using SharePoint more in various kind of groups or departments, we can actually show management that adoption is actually increasing and that the training we're providing is actually beneficial in helping our users leverage SharePoint. Through analytics, we can also measure improved productivity. So a great example of this is through search. So if we find out that everyone is searching for the same content, let's put a link on the homepage. Kind of save everyone that 30 seconds each day that they're searching for that same popular content and make it much more accessible for them. Another major theme in tracking adoption is improving collaboration. So a huge goal for SharePoint, helping different teams and employees collaborate. And of course now, offices can span across various states, countries, time zones. So the ability to show that there is a collaboration and that people are really leveraging the tools for collaborating is really important. And we can talk about collaboration, and this really ties into SharePoint social or any of these kind of social tools like Yammer and Citrion as well. And finally, engagement. So also in terms of engagement with these new social features, so anything from communities beyond just viewing this content, there's, extended capabilities, so tracking how many people are liking the content, what content is being shared, who's sharing the content, who's writing the content, and more. So we really want to make sure that people are leveraging the ability to use these communities. And if there are communities with lower engagement levels, we can pinpoint them with analytics and then offer them very targeted training, because we know that these specific communities aren't leveraging SharePoint as often. And that's exactly the reason why we need analytics and where they come in handy when talking about SharePoint and engagement. So going just a step back to talk about this kind of wide array of metrics that are available. So this is kind of a basic screenshot of the metrics and the different metrics categories that we have available in Cardiolog Analytics. So you can see we have things like these traditional metrics like page views, search, traffic sources, etc. And then also these social metrics, which are becoming increasingly more important. So this means in terms of traditional metrics, monitoring things like information around the visitors, how are the users navigating through the portal, where are they getting stuck, where are they coming from, what are they searching for, so what are they interested in, and what do they have difficulty finding within the portal, and even portal growth metrics, so these kind of governance metrics or administrative metrics. What are the content-heavy items within the portal? Who is modifying documents, and what documents are being modified? So the list can go on and on, but essentially if we drill down into this visitor area, we can see the traditional metrics, and we can drill into these user-centric metrics. So for now, we're going to kind of start drilling into that first category that I mentioned previously, which was around users. So if we look at this unique user table, we see integration with Active Directory. And here we see the unique user name, and based on this, we can make improvements. So for example, if we see there is a cutoff for a certain number of views within a specified date range, anyone who doesn't meet that cutoff can be sent for training. And if we move to the right and analyze a page views metric, it allows you to see content that no one is viewing. So there's not very many users visiting, or the exit rate is very high. This may tell us that it's not a very important piece of information or isn't necessarily providing value to the customers. To the users. So we can go ahead and remove it from the portal and save up some space. Conversely, if it's very important for the business and there isn't a lot of foot traffic, we can easily make a decision to add a button to the homepage and make this very important item more accessible for users to see. So again, these user-centric metrics are really a practical way to build the foundation of the portal and help your users find real value in the portal. We can also drill down into more social metrics like I mentioned previously. So I've just showed you these kind of traditional metrics, which are the foundation of adoption, but adding on with these social metrics can really give you a holistic perspective on what's going on with your users from every dimension. So for example, you can see a user's activity chart, and with each user's posts, comments, discussions, and replies. And you can also create an influential users chart. So not only are you viewing these unique users like I showed you on the last slide, but you can also see which users are gaining influence in the portal and are kind of, leading the pack. And you can leverage these users to lead SharePoint groups in terms of, kind of being evangelists in the portal as well. Visitor loyalty, this is actually a more recent metric that we've added. So visitor loyalty is a good metric for enterprise organizations because it really gives you insights as to whether visitors have a reason to come back in the portal. So to engage and to interact. So simply put, visitor loyalty is just how many times visitors visit the site within a specified date range. And the real foundation for portal success is a large and loyal set of visitors. So to constantly improve portal adoption, stakeholders and administrators need to understand who the loyal visitors are and what makes them loyal. So empowering these visitors who display this kind of loyal behavior can start a chain reaction and thus leverage these users to motivate others in their network and to jump onto the SharePoint train. Recency is another metric that we added recently. So how long does it take your users before they decide to come back and visit the portal? So this recency can indicate your users' level engagement with the portal. So to measure improvement, it's really necessary to make comparisons over time. So if your users are revisiting the portal more frequently, you can assume that the content provided on the portal is more engaging and helpful to them. You can also think of ways to encourage people to return to the portal, and that's really necessary for ensuring just general overall retention rates as well. And the trick is finding ways to kind of tempt these users with something to come back for. So even a series of posts that tell a story or maybe a competition within the portal, frequently updated newsletters and employee highlights, these are all great ways to grab user attention and keep them coming back for more. So now I'll transition to our second category for improving adoption, and that's productivity. So I mentioned previously that search reports can drastically help you improve your users' productivity levels in SharePoint. So for example, with an on-site search phrases report, it not only tells you the exact search phrases that people entered, but also with top-ranked search phrases, you can also gather deep insights into what your users are searching for, what they need help with, and what topics they're interested in. So you can easily leverage these insights to create navigation paths and easy routes for users to access popular content or content that's valuable to the organization. So essentially, this can really save your users a lot of time. And another interesting metric relating to productivity that I wanted to share with you here on the upper right-hand corner is the average number of contributions per user. So with this metric, you can really get this kind of in-depth glimpse at the exact levels individual users are actively contributing content. Here, I just wanted to show you guys a quick navigation summary. So it's essentially a 3-page analysis. So the previous page, the selected page, and the next page. And it can show you if your portal's visitors are following the paths that you're looking for them to take to ultimately complete a desired action in the portal. Navigation reports, in terms of productivity, this is really important. So you can see here we've got one report with exit pages, and we've got another report with internal traffic sources. So you can see here the number of exits are listed, number of page views, and even the exit rate per page. And then again, you can see also here the referrer and how many clicks are included on internal traffic source reports. Broken links. A broken link is a link that just doesn't work, often resulting in a kind of error page, perhaps because the page is encountering that the links or the content has been renamed or deleted or moved. There could be perhaps a typo in the link, or the link points to a page that is behind some sort of firewall or doesn't allow outside access. So broken links can be really problematic for users of a web, because as they're unable to access the desired resource, it really impedes them from completing a task. So if there are too many broken links, it can really negatively affect how your users navigate through the portal. Moving on to collaboration metrics. So metrics surrounding content is huge for collaboration. Also, there's a big shift here when talking about adoption from just page views, but to these more social metrics. So besides what's being viewed very often, we're going to see what content is the most influential and then make that content easier to find for users. So this can be done, like I said, through links on the home page. And we define influential content by things such as comments, most likes, highest ratings, followers, etc. So these two metrics are kind of drill down, so you can see exactly how many likes individual pieces of content are getting, as well as with rated content, the average ratings, and how many raters are interacting with the content. So all of these kind of fit into this bigger picture of improving collaboration, which inherently will improve the overall adoption levels in the portal. And by essentially arming yourselves with this data, you can really understand where your collaboration levels are and then take action from there. So the last category that I'd like to touch on is engagement. So when talking about adoption, we've seen this shift from just basic usage in the portal to real engagement with the portal. So there are active discussions going on in the communities. So if we can monitor what are the active communities, how many discussions are taking place, how many replies, then we can really start to understand the portal more. So this allows us to pick out these kind of influential topics, for example. So if we see topics with a lot of activity, this allows us to focus if we're mining for interesting information, and we now know we should surface this content or focus on these communities to improve adoption. And sometimes you could even have, different measurements for engagement depending on the type of community. So sometimes a broader kind of all-employed community that you have might have a lesser level of engagement set. But if you have a very specific specified business unit, checking into this community on SharePoint just once a week may not be enough, and could even be considered fairly disengaged. So you'd really want to raise the bar and set your KPI to a different standard. And I think this really all ties into, what is the desired outcomes for engagement and adoption levels? What are we trying to measure versus just kind of setting these general KPIs and assigning them across each community as the same thing. And lastly, oftentimes the best way to measure employee engagement is just to simply ask them. So we know this is kind of a soft concept, so to speak, so it's very hard to come up with set metrics, and so for that reason, we need to go to employees and ask them and say, hey, how are you doing? Are you finding what you need? Do you need help with anything? And this really brings me to the point that we should focus on value as opposed to actions. So how are we adding value with these metrics and the goals that we initially set for, SharePoint, Office 365, or any SharePoint portal? And I think that's kind of a very important question that these business users really need to consider when deploying SharePoint. Okay, and now I want to just transition quickly. So from here, I'll show just a brief example of a few of these metrics. So here, this is an example of the Cardiolog Analytics user interface. On the left-hand side, you can see the entire SharePoint hierarchy. So here we're tracking 2010 farm, 2013, and even SharePoint Online. And you could even drill down even more to any object here. So, whether it's an entire farm or a page or a site, we've even got lists and individual lists you can see here as well. So you can really get these instant dashboards to get this data that we just talked about. So for instance, you can see unique users, visits, duration, navigation summary, and so forth. From here, I'd like to just jump into Microsoft's Power BI, which we've recently also integrated with. It's a great interface and a great way to kind of analyze all this data. It's really easy to consume and have a lot of really nice widgets that you can drag and drop across the dashboard. So I have this dashboard here with all these different widgets. There's just a couple of things I'd like to show you. So if we click here on this widget, for example, we've got page views by country and browser. We'll click here. So now this kind of looks like a PowerPoint slide. And here you can see these widgets. They're all connected. So if I want to see data for just, I don't know, let's just choose the month of March, for instance. You'll see all the other widgets are going to change and show me just data for the month of March. Very similarly, if you want to see data for just, let's say, the United States, for example, click here on the United States, and all the other metrics have changed to reflect that as well. So that's just something really interesting that's happening within Power BI. I'm going to go back for a second, and I wanted to show you this Ask a Question box that I think is really cool. So here you can see it says ask a question about the data on this dashboard. So you can just enter into this field. So instead of creating all these new dashboards and new reports when you simply just want to know a very quick tidbit of information, we can type in, for instance, page views by browser. And right away, in this very kind of ad hoc way, let's go to it. Page views by browser. Okay. Let's try this again. Page views by browser. Maybe it would help if I spelled it correctly. There we go. So again, in this kind of very ad hoc way, you can see which users are using each browser. So for example, if people shouldn't be using Firefox, you can see here there were 2,196 page views with Firefox. So you can see that there needs to be some sort of change implemented so that your users are not using Firefox if that is a company policy. So that's just a quick example of how Cardilog works within our own environment and also within Power BI. So I'm just going to show you guys also, we just recently released a few ebooks. So we have our Introduction to Internet Analytics ebook. It's a great kind of beginner's introduction ebook for people who aren't familiar with the kind of basic metrics to use. We've also have an ebook tailored to users from life science and pharmaceutical organizations. Same thing goes, it's also an Internet Analytics ebook for users from government. And lastly, we have our newest ebook, and it's called A 10-Minute Guide to Kickstarting Your SharePoint Migration with Analytics. So this is an ebook focused on helping users use analytics to enhance their SharePoint migration. And if anyone is interested in any of these ebooks, they are available on our website. And feel free to send us a quick chat if you also would. I can easily send you a link to whichever ebook you prefer as well. So that was just a quick example. We didn't have a lot of time today, but we have a few minutes towards the end. So I'll go ahead and take a look at some of these questions that you guys entered into the chat. If you didn't have any time to send over your questions, again, feel free to type those into the GoToWebinar panel now. I'll just wait 1 second. Okay. So my first question, I've got a question from Rob here asking about whether Cardiolog Analytics is available on premises or SaaS or both. So my answer to that is that Cardiolog is available for both on-premises deployments as well as SaaS. Beyond that, if you have any sort of technical questions about how this is implemented, I'd be happy to put you in touch with the right person, and feel free to reach out to us via email, and we'd be very happy to have someone get in touch with you about that. Second question I've got here coming from Julie. She's asking, how does Cardiolog collect the data from SharePoint? So this is done through a JavaScript tracking code that is implemented on each page of the SharePoint environment. So this is a sort of page tagging method, so to speak. And I've got my last question of the day. So far, it's come from Joseph. He's asking, how does Cardiolog Analytics differ from SharePoint out-of-the-box kind of usage reports? So I think the easiest way to tackle this is I'll send you a breakdown of the numerous reports offered by Cardiolog, and we have a kind of comparison versus these out-of-the-box reports offered from Microsoft. And beyond reporting, I can tell you that Cardiolog Analytics does offer these kind of collaboration and engagement tools that are not offered through out-of-the-box reporting. And this really kind of takes your reporting one step further. So I'll send that link your way, Joseph, and if anyone else is interested, just send me a quick chat and I'll be happy to share that with you as well. So that's all the questions that I've received so far. If anyone has any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us at info@intblock.com. We're always happy to take questions. If anyone is interested in a personal demo, feel free. They are available at intlock.com. Also, you can request through email as well. You can also tweet us at Cardiolog. And lastly, we are actively blogging, so if you would like to read our blog on latest insights on SharePoint and Office 365, you can join our readers at blog.intlock.com. And again, I will be posting this recording online in the next couple of days, so stay tuned for that, and thank you for joining. Have a great day, everyone.